There was recently a news post, which was a rumor, a report suggesting that CLG, Counterlogic Gaming, a famous League of Legends team in North America, was considering or actively kind of pursuing getting a Counter-Strike Global Offensive team. And this is a topic that's been on my mind recently because when this article came out by Lurpus, where he explained the economics behind the sticker money in Counter-Strike and kind of basically that beyond just prize money and the normal exposure aspect, organizations and players suddenly had an influx of a massively increased influx revenue stream that they could kind of tap in terms of fans and interest and money to be gotten. And when I found out the kinds of sums of money he was talking about, it made me immediately think to myself, not only is it now time for North American Esports organizations to embrace CSGO and get into the game and get a team themselves and build up that aspect of their brand and get involved in the community, but it almost is illogical to a degree that if they don't. And so now is the time to do it. If we think about the history of North American Esports organizations within Counter-Strike Global Offensive, there have been some ventures, but not many and not really fully committed. So the original ones were Complexity, who was the team that is now Cloud9, and Curse North America. That was the team that later became iBuyPower in terms of the core players went over, and that's what is iBuyPower now. And Curse North America, the same organization, also actually funded a European team, the Finnish team, that is, well, one of the players, Natu at least, is now in 3D Max. And so, yeah, there was those two teams initially, and then we got Cloud9 took over Complexity shortly before ESL 1 Cologne. So just after the middle part of this year is when they got Complexity. Cloud9 comes from League of Legends. They are one of the first big organizations from North America to get involved, aside from that small venture of Curse in late 2012 and early 2013, like I mentioned. And admittedly, Curse did get a bit burned there because their NA team famously was just had the same problems iBuyPower had, where they constantly underperformed in international events outside of NA. So sending them there, yes, you got exposure, but to a degree it was kind of a waste of money because they never would get really far. And then also their Finnish team had one good result early on where they made it to the final of 4 Open, I think was the tournament. But then after that, they pretty much dwindled away and they didn't really have any results at all. So I can understand that Curse's organization maybe felt a little bit burned or like, oh, we'll just cut our losses early there. But if we go forwards now, 2014 is a very different world to 2013 and 2012. In 2012, no one even knew if CSGO would be a big game. Like the majority of the events back then, if you go and look at the tournaments, Nip was winning sums like 5,000 euros for first place in a LAN tournament. It wasn't much money at all. There were a lot of small events, bordering on medium events that would start to pop. And as 2013 went on, we got bigger events. And finally we got the major at the end. And we had to start to get quite a healthy circuit, actually, a proper major. Then we now had 3 majors this year, 250k prize purses along the way, and obviously the crowdfunding with the sticker capsules and the esports cases has now made the game huge in that sense. And we've had all these other tournaments along the way, and so now you can win hundreds of thousands of dollars, and the exposure level is really good. And that's kind of the point we're getting to here, is that just on an exposure level, CSGO is up there with all the other games and higher than some of them. In those majors, we're getting records of like over 440k or 450,000 people watching live for the majors with the skin drops and all the rest of it. We're getting 50,000 people at a time concurrent watching online games in these cups that we have. Sticker money. You can now, based on the last figure, based on the ones 2 ago at Cologne, the money was up to, the reports said it was up to $120,000 per team that was in the Legends capsule of the top 8 teams. That's per team. And organizations, most of them are taking a cut of that. Not all of them give all the money to the players, and depending on the cut they want to give in terms of salary, they can take more or less, or however they want to work it. And that means that essentially, once you get to those sorts of sums of money, and that's only going up at the moment, you're actually getting into a world where, for some of these teams, especially North American orgs, where actually the investment is less, because yes, you have to go to Europe, but you might only have to go to Europe for 2 or 3 events a year, or 4 or 5 events a year, depending on how many you want to do, if you look at the current track record of a lot of these teams. So actually, it's getting to the point now where it's not as ridiculous as you're getting paid to have a team, which is, to a degree, almost what happens with some of the LCS teams, on paper if you're the worst ones. But it's almost getting there where the money you're actually going to get back and the exposure you're going to get back is more than going to pay for the initial investment. And that's the key thing here. is that a lot of the reason why I think the North American orgs haven't gotten involved, and they have a lot of money, by the way, a lot of sponsorship, they have a lot more than Europe, that's for sure, is because of the fact that there haven't been enough good teams, and that going to mean some obvious like slam dunk offers. And some of the things I've heard of in the past where big orgs like that were looking at teams, it was always with European teams. Now, first of all, let's ask about NA teams, because ideally for a North American org with North American sponsors, North American fans, you're going to want to get an NA team if you can. Now, at the moment, it's true. There is only iBuyPower and only Cloud9, at least until very recently, that had any legit chance at doing anything. And Cloud9 has dropped off in terms of results a bit. But okay, there was those two teams. Now, in terms of Cloud9, unless you make some super sick offer and you can get them out of their contracts or buying it, it's very unlikely you can get that team unless you wait till their contracts run out. Because Cloud9 is a big org themselves. It looks like they have invested into that team. They've put a lot in there. iBuyPower is mainly known in other games as a sponsor of teams. Like, they sponsor CLG. They're not usually known as like the owners or the funders of a team. And just based on the little bits I know, I would actually be surprised if their deal was as good as the Cloud9 deal based on the existing deal they had before. Like, I wouldn't imagine it's quite the same level. So maybe iBuyPower is available. If you're a big org and you want to invest a lot and go hard, maybe you could buy a team like that away. But even if we take those aside, okay, it's true the teams afterwards, teams like Denial, these sorts of teams, yeah, they're not on that level overall. Yeah, they did okay at ESEA, but they haven't got the pedigree, the exposure, they haven't got the experience of some of the teams I'm talking about there, and the players I'm talking about there. So it's true, if you invest into them, it might be a big investment initially, and you might be worried about the investment. But first of all, by investing in and committing in a game that's already this big and looks like it's going to continue getting bigger and has all these positives going for you, where if you get to a major, you get this money back and extra exposure and all these factors, it actually starts to take away a lot of that risk. Because say you invest in this team and the initial one doesn't work out. Let's say you give them a 3-month contract. Let's say the initial team doesn't work out. Okay, now that you've invested, now there's more teams and more opportunity. And so other players know there's more opportunity. They're going to go even harder, practice more, start taking chances, go to a LAN, prove themselves to the degree that, and also crucially, when people drop out of those other top two teams, Cloud9 and iBuyPower, they don't have to just go to the other team or retire or whatever. Now there's a third option. You can have them make a team, and who knows, if Daze and Steel and those other guys all leave this team and Hiko leaves, maybe they go to the third option instead. Maybe they don't just go to swap between iBuyPower and Cloud9 depending on political relationships between them. Now you get a proper three-way thing, so it's not just a hegemony of one team dominating here or there. Now you've got a trinity of teams going in and out, and this love triangle between them, and then you know what? You have another fourth team there. And you can see how the scene itself will organically build itself up. Once these positions exist and can be filled and there's real money there, it doesn't matter how shit the first people are, because other people will come along who are better and compete for those spots, and you can then replace the bad people if you have them with those people. You can go, right, well, he's better, so I'll bring him in now. Maybe this Nightcrawler guy is awesome, and you bring him and pick him up on your team, and now you make a great, and that was like your key GM type move where you realize the value in him, you bring him onto your team, you have success there. It's going to grow the scene and build it. And crucially, there's going to be more opportunities in North America, because now we've got tournaments in North America that seem to be starting. We already had ESEA, but who knows, maybe a major one day. We've already got one event, MLGX Games. It's going to be in Aspen. It's going to be in January. There's an event in North America. It's going to have North American representation. With tournaments in North America, now you don't even have to invest all the money just to send the teams abroad overseas to Europe. Now you're going to have tournaments in North America itself. So if you've got an NA team, even an underdog one, now it's a perfect chance to get more exposure, more bang for your buck. Now then, here's the thing as well. Like I said before, with some of those big orgs that were thinking about some European teams, that's another factor. You don't have to get a North American team. Sure, you have the fan base and the sponsors over here, but you still get represented. And in fact, it's a way to represent your brand in another region. And to say there's a sponsor here who you've already got a relationship in NA, like, listen, I'm doing a great service for you in NA, doing all this stuff. But you know what? We can take this brand and I can help you market it into Europe, and I can get you a foothold there, and I can get people interested over here, and you can do all these things. So there's teams definitely in Europe, good teams who aren't playing for amazing organizations, because there are only so many organizations in Europe with huge funding. So some of those teams, you could snap them up. You could make them deals that at the moment, with all the sticker money and all the rest of it, you could make them either favorable deals, give them more sticker money, or you could definitely beat some of the salaries. So the options are there in all areas to make the scene bigger in this respect. And obviously, if the North American teams get involved with their money and their salaries, and it forces competition between the European teams and all the rest of that sort of thing, if NA can get bigger, now the scene's going to get bigger. We're going to have more competition, we're going to have better tournaments. It's also going to make it cooler on the circuit, where we have certain NA teams where you only seen certain NA tournaments where more than just DSEA, where it's kind of a joke outside the top two. Now you're getting legitimate competition that we don't usually see when the teams go over to there. And likewise, some of the best ones then now are starting to come out to the European tournaments. The scene is growing. Obviously, in an ideal world, every region we represent, we have China, we have Korea. But for the moment, that's a pipe dream. North America is not. That can really happen. So who are some of these organizations I'm talking about? Who should be involved? To me, the two that jump immediately off the page, my tier one is going to be TSM, Team Solo Mid, and Evil Geniuses. Now, Team Solo Mid is the most popular, probably the most famous League of Legends team in the entire world. And they're still not like, they're almost like the Dallas Cowboys in as much. They're like North America's favorite, or like the Lakers in basketball. They're the team that everyone loves and have the most fans. And everywhere you go, there's a TSM fan there who loves to get. So they have North America already by the balls to a degree. And they have tons of money because they're also easily the most successful in terms of streaming numbers in League of Legends. If you get some, I know tons of crossover between League of Legends and CSGO. People who play CSGO but watch League of Legends or come from League of Legends or originally play League of Legends. There's a lot of crossover from CSGO to the other games, actually. It's one of the ones that's permeated the most, whereas actually there's not that much crossover between StarCraft 2 and League of Legends. You know, it doesn't go that much. So here's the thing. If you were to get a big streaming guy like a Shroud or Hiko or some of these people and put them on your TSM network, which you already get bigger views anyway from being TSM, I'm pretty sure they'd blow up even more and you'd have even more, you'd be getting direct exposure there. There's a lot can be done here, especially certain personalities, Nothing, some of these other people. There's a lot can be done with these if you want to just talk about marketing aspects. So TSM to me is a shoo-in. They should definitely be involved. Evil Geniuses definitely, because they have teams in all these different games, historically in all these different games. They've even had Counter-Strike in the past. Crucially, they're not just in League of Legends, but they're big in League of Legends, big in Dota, big in StarCraft 2 to a degree still. In theory, this team can be involved anywhere. So these are the two teams where, to me, it's a no-brainer. With this sticker money and exposure and majors, these teams have to get involved. If they don't, now I'm getting a bit suspicious. Why wouldn't they? What do they not like Counter-Strike? I don't know what the reasoning could be, because now it seems like there's almost no reason not to. If we go down a level, now we've got Curse, who I mentioned before. Admittedly, they got burned a bit before, but you know what? Now's the time. Now's the opportunity where you're going to get a lot of bang for your buck. And you know what? If you come in before those other teams, you can snap up the better teams, and you can be the first there, and you can establish something, a bit like Cloud9 did, where now it doesn't even matter. Even if someone else from your sector, your peers, come in, you've already got part of the market corner. You've got a relationship with players and sponsors and exposure, and your brand's now associated with CSGO with more history than the others who are kind of Johnny-come-latelys. Likewise, CLG, the one that started this all off when I mentioned the rumour, Counter Logic Gaming, they actually have barely gotten any other teams or respect or representation in any other games since League of Legends. So to me, it's obvious that they should get involved here. It would make a lot of sense. Now then, if these teams do get involved like that, then obviously it's going to put us in a position where, like I say, the competition level rises, their exposure rises, esports as a whole is getting a bit bigger, but crucially, CSGO esports is getting bigger. There's already a North American scene burgeoning, and there are players below the surface. We've seen the Desi, Nitro, Shazam, all these players. Some of them are just waiting for experience. They can't all be shit and just all bad, because yeah, their teams haven't been good so far. Give enough of them enough chances, and some of them are going to turn out to be good, and some of these teams are going to turn out to be good, and we're going to now have, so it's not just one team and then they're swapping to players of this one, and there can only be two groups. It will grow in the same way every scene can grow. And so I think these teams, they should get involved, they have to get involved. Now, I will add a caveat that even though I've made all these points that might seem like it makes it a no-brainer, and to me it is, there is a degree to which esports is kind of a conceit, in as much as, because a lot of esports isn't actually built off the exposure and return on interest, really it's kind of a trick. Esports is really a trick where the guy who runs the organization just has to convince the sponsor of his return on interest in terms of exposure and numbers. And as long as he does a good job of selling that idea, that's really what gets him his money. How much money he gets, how often he gets it from how big a company, and whether that company stays with him, is really just how good he is at convincing them. And the reason why I make this point is because there have been other cases where games should have been huge esports or shouldn't have been anymore, but they were able to remain that way or didn't make it purely based on that aspect of the business and the politics. As in, an esport can have huge numbers. We've seen some of these numbers published in China where Crossfire has like hundreds of millions of dollars a year it's making in terms of money from the competitive side of the game. Well, not competitive, but from the casual players of the game. And yet where's the competitive aspect of Crossfire? It's only a few tournaments in Asia, primarily Asian teams. It's not in the West at all. No one's playing it. No one gives a fuck. There's not even a huge scene in China and Korea, etc. It's just these sort of token tournaments. So if it was just about sponsors and eyeballs and all this stuff, it would be a huge esport, but it isn't. Meanwhile, something like StarCraft 2, some of the numbers aren't so great anymore. Some of the metrics aren't that good, but it still remains vital. It still remains this way. And that's part of the reason why also I actually don't expect all of these orgs I've mentioned to just jump in. And some of them might never get involved. Because there are organizations who don't get involved in certain games just because they don't like it, and vice versa. Well, not vice versa, but likewise, they stay in another game that maybe isn't totally worth the money because they do like it. So if one of them loved Quake, some of the guys who were big orgs stayed in Quake a lot longer because maybe they had a player who was really good and they just wanted to be able to say, well, I have a champion in this game, even if the game wasn't as big, rather than have like the 28th best StarCraft 2 player and be behind everyone else in that sense. They'd rather have the best in Quake, for example. Likewise, some of them stuck with Counter-Strike a lot longer. FIFA is an obvious one in Europe where certain teams, especially German ones, seem to have this ridiculous predilection for FIFA and this appetite for it in a degree that it isn't represented in the rest of the world. So there are caveats that mean I can understand why some of these orgs won't get involved and don't want to and maybe never will. But in general, for these ones, I think overall, they have to and it should make sense. And if it isn't, then I'd love to know some reasons why, specifically from those orgs, if they can come up with good reasons or what CSGO needs, where it needs to improve to another level or something else has to get involved to make it worth it on their end. Because to me, the North American scene in CSGO, yeah, it isn't very good. It's significantly weaker than the European one. It doesn't have the same depth and variety and number of teams that can compete and tournaments. But in terms of sponsorship and esports side of the industry, it's actually bigger than in Europe. So once that gets connected to the scene, that's going to grow it. And that's going to be kind of like the river that feeds the tree that can then grow into something massive. So I think it's the time.